Okay, welcome to this session. My name is Freddy Kristiansen. I'm a technical evangelist with Microsoft. And with me I have...
I'm Nikola, and I'm a senior software developer with Microsoft.
We are going to talk about CIAL to AL. We have like a few objectives here. We want to show you the big picture. How do you get from one world to the other? This morning in the session that was called, I think, the road from CIAL to AL, they promised you that this session was going to be with sharks and with crocodiles, and that's actually not true. We had a Twitter picture with those creatures, but we decided they were too dangerous to have in the session, so we left them out. We will, however, have a Zeppelin here, so and Nikola will do his best to avoid a Hindenburg disaster, I think. We're going to give you an overview of how to get from a CIAL code customized solution to a AL solution in 15. And we're actually going to demo all the steps in that. We're not going to go in detail with the text to AL. Alex already did that this morning. We're also not going to go in detail about the parameters in that. We are, however, going to convert the code and upgrade the data. We're also going to talk about the obstacles there are during this upgrade process and why you should consider the different options you have, and in some cases, why you maybe should wait a month or two before actually going there. We're also going to discuss the pitfalls, and of course, since I'm here, I'll tell you that you can do everything in Docker. You don't have to do everything in Docker, though. All that we're doing here, and I actually will spend just a few minutes to demystify a few things in Docker and say, well, everything we're doing in Docker is exactly like you're doing in a VM or in any other machines. We've just created a number of helper functions to make things easier when you're using Docker, and then everything is prepared for you in Docker. Before we go into the session, I want to highlight one thing. #BCALHelp. We actually decided that this hashtag should be kicked off here at TechDays, like a hashtag where people could write questions and the community could answer. Like there's a hashtag called SQL Help doing the same thing. And we wanted to kick it off here, and I sent out an email to the MVPs that they should kind of be ready to monitor this hashtag. And somebody then started to use the hashtag. And since then, we've actually had a lot of questions. So introducing is the wrong word, but the slide was created for this purpose, so I didn't want to change it. But use it. #BCALHelp. Answer questions, ask questions. It's not Microsoft standing behind that. It's not us or support that is answering all the questions there. But it is a common place where all of you guys in the community can help each other getting help for Business Central and AL. With that, I'm going to give the word to Nikola.
Thank you, Freddy. So, we are going to start with the big picture. And as you probably experienced it yourself, there are many questions that might confuse you with the latest release, right? So, one of the commonly asked questions is, how do you upgrade to the latest version? How can we get into the cloud? What's happening with this system application? How can we convert the code, and what the consequences of this are? And what is discontinued? And if you're feeling confused, it's not you. Many people are feeling confused. And to quote one of the partners, he framed it the best. He said, there's so many bricks right now that it's really hard to see where each piece fits, right? So it's really hard to see the big picture. So we are starting with the big picture, and we will answer this question, what was discontinued first, because that's the easiest question. So the things that got discontinued is CIAL. We have replaced it with AL, and with that we have replaced C side with VS Code. It's the last release for the Windows client was the previous one. Right now we're in the web client. You may hit some issues with the client-side DLLs. There will be a session tomorrow that will show you how you can refactor the code if you're using any client-side DLLs. And last thing that was discontinued is the XML profiles. We have replaced them with AL profiles. and there is a documentation topic that can help you how to move away from this one. We did a system app refactoring, as you probably know, and this is not a discontinued thing, but it is the additional work. And we are planning to discontinue the integration management or integration records, and we want to replace them with the system ID, because we are seeing a lot of performance issues. We have also heard from the channel that you are experiencing some performance issues if you're using integration records. However, this was too big change to try to rush it in the last few months and not to give you the opportunity to adopt. So we have introduced the system ID, and we are doing a stage deprecation of the integration record. And we'll show you how does the system ID affect the upgrade as well. So basically, this was the entire picture for the discontinuation. Now, for the other questions, the easiest way to explain what is happening in the upgrade is to use the journey metaphor, right? So we are going to start going to a journey, and the most important part is setting the destination. And the destination, of course, is the cloud, right? We would like to get as many of you in the cloud as possible. It is nice in the cloud, the sun is shining, and this is how the ideal architecture in the cloud looks like. So ideally, you would extract all of your customizations into the extension, right? Microsoft would ship the base app, we would ship the system application, and you would be shipping your separate apps. This is the ideal architecture because this scales really well. If you think about the incident, just by looking at the stack trace, we can tell who to blame, and we can easily route incidents, right? If we are having the architecture like this. The second thing that we are promising, if you get into the cloud, we are going to do the upgrade automatically for you, and you will only hear from us if the things stop working, right? If you are getting these exceptions. Now, for the next picture, let's see the higher, bigger picture. And if the cloud is the last stop of this upgrade journey, majority of our partner channel and users are on the ground, right? And we should model the on-prem releases as the mountains. I think it's a good metaphor because mountain is stable, it's nice, it's something that we should feel proud about, right? So if you see, on the left we are having the 14x mountain, on the right we have the 15x mountain, and the 14x is living in the land of CIAL and AL, and 15x is living in the land of AL only, right? If you take a look at the picture really carefully, you will see that 15 is a much bigger and better mountain than 14, and AL is a bigger and better AL than on the 14 side. If I didn't convince you to upgrade, you should definitely upgrade because grass is greener on the other side, so you definitely want to come here. So for the upgrade, the thing that needs to happen is that first you need to come to 14, then from 14 you can go to 15, so it's a two-step upgrade, and from 15 you can go to cloud if that is your desire. We will not cover the step 3 today. That is going to be covered in details in the session tomorrow, which is called migrating your users to the cloud. So today we are staying on the ground. Now, there is an important consideration before you upgrade to 15. And if I would say AL is, I would finish the sentence with amazing. And I mean, if you've seen this like interfaces, right? I mean, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be like when we got the events, but better, right? So if you say that AL is a Superman, then the question is, what is its weakness, right? What is the kryptonite? And there is one thing that AL does badly, and that's SQL schema changes. And that's going to hit you in the upgrade. So we would highly recommend that before going to 15, you make sure that you do not have any breaking SQL schema changes. This may sound hard, because if you look at the object, there is thousands of properties, right? And some of our internal developers were confused with this one. But in reality, it's not, because we store very few things on the SQL. So this is a table definition here. And if you take a look at this, we are storing table names. We are storing field name, type, and length, if applicable. And we are storing primary keys. So these are the only things that you should not change on a table if you would like to have a good experience with moving to 15 and beyond. Supporting the breaking SQL changes is not on the backlog. We are not looking at it right now. And this is an important thing to say to you guys, because if you upgrade with breaking SQL changes, you will probably waiting for a while for us to come up with the feature that is going to help you to sync it out. AL is doing excellent job with breaking SQL changes because we have this trigger in the upgrade, and that is something that all of you guys have been doing for quite a while. So AL is excellent at handling these changes. So do make sure that the schemas are compatible before you go to 15. If you upgrade to AL and you still have some breaking SQL changes and you're on prem, there is a way out of it because you have the direct SQL access. You can force sync the changes, and we have even some MVPs writing some custom tooling to help you extract the fields automatically and to sync out of these. However, unfortunately, there is no official tooling offered by Microsoft. So, if you did additive changes, like adding tables or adding fields to the existing tables, as we are going to show to you today, that's completely fine, and we have a good upgrade story here. Now, so to summarize, when you're upgrading to 14x, make sure that SQL schema contains only additive changes. We highly recommend that you minimize the number of modified objects. And we are recommending, if you want to go to the cloud, to renumber to ISV range and rename. If you want to get to SaaS now, we are looking into making renumbering and renaming easier going forward. So the team is currently looking into if this is going to be possible. So we'll come back to you with the news if and when we are going to implement automatic renumbering and renaming. So that was all about getting up to 14. And now if you would like to get to the step number 2, upgrade to 15, in the past you were able to simply technically upgrade, right? But the problem for 15 is that there is no landing place, right? You can invoke the technical upgrade and convert the database, but you need to build an AL app, right? So the thing that you need to do is that you will need to get a boat, and basically you need to find the bravest and smartest people available. I'm talking about the developers, of course. And you put the developers on the boat, and you ship them to the land of AL, right, before upgrading. And now these people need to build the landing plane, right? The simplest thing you can do is just simply convert to AL, right? You have seen the tooling, and Freddy is going to show you the tooling. You can easily convert CIAL to AL. It's very simple. And you can upgrade to this one, but we are not recommending this. We are recommending refactoring to the system app, and that should be simple. So base app should be using the system application. And you have seen in the presentation from earlier today, if you're having any problems, you can submit feedback on the GitHub, maybe even the pull request. And you can make this thing simply refactoring the system application needs to be easy to do. And the hardest thing to do is to actually go to this architecture, which is the ideal architecture. And that is the highly recommended, where you have extracted all of your customizations into an extension. So this is the general overview. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Freddy to show you how you can climb the mountain. I just have the last request before we start. And that request is, if you're doing this, don't go by boat. Like, that's bad. The thing that you should do is that you should use the proper tool, dock with Docker, right? So Freddy is going to show you now how you can convert.
Okay. Thank you. When we want to move from 14 to 15, and I think Alex already mentioned this in this morning session as well, you kind of have two options, right? You can either convert directly, like take your app, convert it all to 15, and then start refactoring there. If you have a lot of modifications, it might be hard. You might not be proficient in 15. Your developers might be used to CIAL. If you haven't taken up event-based architecture yet, then that might actually be a hard journey to go directly to 15 and then start refactoring over there. You can also refactor in 14. So it looks like this, right? If you have 14, there's a number of things you need to do before going to 15 in order to make it a clean experience when you get to 15. And in our case, the small sample app that we're going to show today actually is already clean. So we did all the 14 work, and it is easy to convert. Of course, A lot of you guys will not be in that situation, but you need the NoSQL breaking changes, as Nikola talked about. You need to clean up properties and code, like Alex talked about this morning. You need to move code customizations to events, so you don't have a lot of code customization modifications in different code units. No modification of objects in the system app. If you have modifications of objects in the system app, it is much harder to uptake the system app changes when you get to 15, right? So if you have modified any of the things that was moved into the system app in 14, remove them before going there. It's much easier. No deleted field, no deleted controls, no code modification. I think I've said that 5 times or whatever. So, and then if you're done with all of these things, if you did the due diligence in 14, then the road to 15 is easier. If you go to 15 first, I mean, take your app, convert everything, and try to, as soon as you can, make everything go through text to AL, and then mangle everything over here to make everything compile. Your journey to 15 might be easier, but then you have a lot of work to do on the 15 side. So how do you determine which road to take? So it looks like this, right? And then we can do a race here and see what actually wins. And I'm pretty sure that in the end, the amount of time you're going to use, whether you take one or the other solution or road, is kind of the same. So how do you determine? And I think it's more about your customers or your solution. If you have customers running on 14 who want to stay on 14 for another year, then do the work on the 14 side while they are still running, and make sure that you prepare the app to get to 15 while they are there. If you have a customer saying, I need to go to 15 now because of I don't know what, well, then the lower solution might be a better option for that customer. In the end, I don't think the difference between the time consumed for both solutions is that big. What we're going to do now is to take you through a journey, like Nikola said. What I have on this laptop is a solution, a very small solution that Nikola created for me. I'm of course running my service tier in Docker, but I have my database placed on the host, and the reason for that is of course that I can now replace the Docker container which is running 14 with a Docker container running 15 and do all my upgrade when I'm done converting the app. Let me show you what I have on this laptop and do just a few things to tell you what Docker is and what Docker is not. Switching to my laptop, I have a production web client here. We'll start that. And I'm going to connect to my production environment, having my customers list. And one of the things that my small modification is doing is adding a reward point system and a gold customer system to my customers. So what I'm going to do here is actually give this guy 50,000 points, and I'm going to make him gold. The entire idea is that in the end of this one, we're going to run this in 15 and see that he still has his 50,000 points, and he's still a gold customer. So that's our 14. Let's have a look at the database. This one is SQL Management Studio running on localhost. As you can see, we have one database, actually the only database in my SQL server, the production. A lot of tables. Some of the tables have a $GUID after it. That is, of course, a table extension where some of the fields is placed in that one. And we can go into the tables and see what's in there and what's not if we wanted to do that. Let's have a look at some Docker things. So what's the difference between running my service tier on my host here or running it in Docker? Basically nothing. In Docker, a Docker container is just like a VM. It's just like, you don't have a GUI, you don't have a remote desktop, but it is a virtual machine where you can connect with a command prompt or PowerShell and go into the file system inside that one. We have Docker container or Docker images out there with all the versions that we're running, from NAV 2016 to the next version of Business Central. And you can just by specifying the version you want, you can get that version and run it. So it is that simple. Let's have a look at a few PowerShell things and see what we actually can do. So I said it's like a VM, and it's like the service tiers running inside of that one. On the desktop, when I'm running a Docker container, I'll actually have a few shortcuts, and I can double-click one of this. This one is opening a command prompt inside the container. So I'm not connected to that virtual machine, and I'm looking at the file system inside the container. I can do the same with PowerShell, with this one. And what I have with PowerShell is I already have all the commandlets and everything that you're used to in NAV loaded. So I can say Control-C here and paste that here and say Enter. I did not. Okay. Server instance is not. Okay, let's see if we have BC then. Actually, that was stupid. Okay, I'll do the other one then. Enter nav container here and say my prod. Inside of this one, I definitely have those commands loaded. I thought I had them in the other one. But anyway, and now I should be able to run this one. Did you know should? Before I said can. Now I'm kind of not knowing it. Okay, that worked. That's fine. Saved by the bell. So what get nav server user has been doing for the last 10 years or so is to return the users in the database, right? Get nav app info will do exactly the same, or will return the app info. So what I'm running here is standard PowerShell commandlets for NAV and or Business Central, because I've entered the container and I'm inside of that context and I have everything pre-installed, and the server instance variable is already set for me, so that if I have a look at what that is here, server instance, that is NAV in a 14 container. And if we look how the 15 container looks a little later, it is BC. So what about all these scripts that you can do, compile objects in nav container, import objects and all of these things? Well, in the end, all of these are just doing the same thing as you see up there. Invoke script inside of a container and then using the existing functionality. The only thing I'm doing inside of these high-level things are kind of packaging things, that figuring out, okay, what service, what authentication mechanism is he using, then I'm making sure that everything is working with that. And in the end, I'll end up calling compile nav application object with the right parameters for doing that in a container. If you don't want to use all these high-level commandlets because you can't figure out or you can't really understand what they're doing, it is totally okay to use invoke script in container and then just write the PowerShell yourself. Do exactly like you do if you would install the service tier on the host. So see Docker as a mechanism where you very, very easily can get an installation of any version of Business Central or NAV running on a machine within a few minutes. And that's basically the only thing you need to know. There are, of course, things that can be hard to make run, but we'll try to help you with that with the ContainerHelper as well. When spinning up containers, with compatibility issues and stuff like that, we are trying to make that work. Now, before I do the actual demo, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. First, convert to AL extension. We talked about the two different options here. You can convert from 14 to an extension, and then you are in a good place. The only thing that we need to do in the code conversion world here is that we're going to create another container, which is a 14 developer container. Then we're going to import our objects into that one. We're going to compile the objects. We're going to convert my modifications to an AL app. That is done by extracting deltas and taking these deltas and sending them through the text-to-AL tool. Again, there's a high-level command for doing that in Docker. But again, you can do all of the same things if you don't use that high-level command, just by using invoke script in the container. Maybe you're running into problems with the high-level command, then that is an option as well. We're going to create our AL project by adding an app.json file to that one. I think Alex told you the same this morning as well. And compile our AL project. We have an app file. And now this app file can be installed. But wait a minute. Where should we install it? Well, let's see the demo here first, and then figure out whether we can actually do something more with that. The first demo, I'm going to do the CIAL to AL conversion. And the PowerShell for that, we'll see here, import objects to NAV container, compile, convert modified objects to AL. Then we are creating the app.json file by taking a template and setting the ID, name, publisher, and target. And then we're going to compile our app. And last but not least, I'm just going to open up the folder so that we can see what actually happened inside of that folder. So let's mark all of this and press F8 to do all of that and give it some more space here. So I already did create the container because it takes a few minutes. So it's not doing that. I think it's probably creating a session to that one so that it can import our objects, the rewards app code text file, import those into the container, and then after that, it's important to compile the objects because exporting to new syntax is actually different if you have uncompiled objects than it is if you have compiled objects, meaning that if you don't compile the objects, you'll get a result that is hard to compare with other things. So usually this goes like lightning. It's going to be exciting if it's this slow all the time, but let's see. My laptop probably knows that I'm on stage. So compile the objects. And the next thing is convert to AL, and then it should do the rest of the things. Maybe, no, there's no connectivity issues. I'll look at that when I give, okay. Oh, the power's there. Nope. Okay. I think my laptop decided to slow down so that everybody could follow exactly step by step what's happening. So it exports the objects with a filter. It figures out what objects are actually modified, keeping the delta files. Now it has a folder with all of these things, and then it will run the text-to-AL to that. Rename the new objects to text files so that it's going to create table and page extensions for the modified files, and then running text-to-AL for only the files that were there. Created the AL files, adding the app.json, and then compiling the app. So maybe I should just getting a little nervous on our last demo because that one actually takes some time. This one shouldn't take so much time. But anyway, we will we'll find out. Downloading symbols and compiling. So the compile app in BC container is actually going to use the container and compile the app inside the container. So it's going to give the source code to the container and then run the compiler inside the container. And the reason for that is not to contaminate the host. So the more you have to extract from the DVD and add on the host, the the more your host becomes a machine where you only can run this version on. So this is the output of the first one, right? We have our app file here, that's my app. We have all the source. We can see that we have some code units, a table, reward provider, and we have a table extension for the customer and a table extension for the customer card, which is kind of fine. We can install this one and see if we can get going on that. So if we do that, then our data upgrade, the new table will be just fine. We can actually map a new table if we do data upgrade from an existing CIAL solution into a new base app with a new extension. We can map the new table from, or the existing table from, or the new table you had in your CIAL solution to a new table in an application. We cannot do the same with customized tables, right? So what we wanted to get out of this was actually a companion table like I showed you in SQL Server Management Studio, a table that would extend the other table with those two fields that we actually created here. And we don't have that functionality right now. I think the team is working on that, and within the next couple of releases, I was specifically asked not to give a date. We'll release the functionality so that you can actually transfer those and get a table extension out of that as well. Probably from AL to AL, but then the road is just that step. That's not a very big problem. So we're not going to do this. What we're going to do instead is have a look at the other solution now. If we have a solution like this one where we had our customized base app with added fields, let's have a look at what happens if we do code customized solution to a code customized solution in AL. The steps for that one is kind of the same. We create a developer container with that version of Business Central that we want. We import our objects, compile our objects. Then we'll create a 14.x baseline. Right now we have the entire app. We have everything that we want to merge with 15. So we create a 14x baseline. That means that we take all the objects of that version of 14 precisely as it was before our modifications was added, and we export those. I know we have already imported our objects, but we can still export the baseline by specifying use baseline, or you can do it when you have created the container, of course. This means that we'll have a project with all the files in AL. Then we're going to create my base app in 14 in AL. Then we're going to create a 15 container and create a baseline in that one. What we want to do now is to do a three-way merge of that. And that is done by taking the folders there and comparing them. As you might know, there are a lot of things that has changed between the 14x baseline and the 15x baseline. Do we really want to compare everything? No, we don't. We actually only want to compare what we modified. And since we didn't modify the system app, or since we didn't modify a lot of things, in our case we only had 2 objects that we modified, while we're creating our baseline, we actually specify a source file destination pattern that puts all the modified files in one folder, all the new files in another folder, and all the base app folders, all the base app files in a third folder. That means that when we want to do this three-way merge, we'll simply take all our unmodified 15x files and say that is the result of the base app folder. Then we'll take all the new objects directly from our 14 folder, copy down, and then we'll do a three-way merge between our baseline, our modified base app, and the 15x baseline. You might think that this is undoable, and it's tricky, but you actually can, when you export the baseline from 14, you can use the text-to-AL tool from the 15 container, which actually then will format the AL code in the same way as 15, and it will put in the spaces correctly and everything, and you do the same with the My Base App, meaning that the structure of the files will be identical, and it actually, in the case of the very small modifications we have, is pretty easy to merge. Let's see if we can get some more performance out of this laptop. I didn't change anything, but let's switch to this one. Actually, I think I'll get to this one, and then we'll have our 15x My Base App, and let's demo that. Go over to this machine. We're going to see PowerShell again. The way that you structure your files is you're creating a file structure function here in PowerShell to specify what objects goes where, and then you call a function called createAL project from a container. Again, it is only a high-level function which basically just goes in and exports things and does a lot of gymnastics with the existing PowerShell commandlets. I'm going to do the same with the 15 baseline and the same with my base app. The only difference for the 14 container is I specify use baseline, which direct my high-level function to take the original files that I created when I created the container. The same with the 15 container here. And for the 14 my base app, I just specify that I want the objects as they are, so they're actually going to export the objects and create it out of that. Now, I'm pretty sure that all of that has already run. So I'm not going to wait for that, but I will run until this point. So the baseline, creating the baseline for all of these things was very, very fast, and the reason for that is that I already staged that. So I did that up front. Normally it takes some time. The next step, which shouldn't take any time, of course, takes some time. And what I'm doing there is I'm preparing my merge folder, and I'm copying everything from the 15 container, and then I'm copying my objects from the 14 container, as I talked about, and then I'm going to call a three-way merge tool called kdiff3, which is free. A three-way merge tool, which is free. Yeah, almost rhymes. So there we are. kdiff3 starts up, and it tells me that I have two files that is different, and I need to merge those. So that's the customer card. I don't know if I can zoom in on this one. I can. Can you see what's happening? Yeah, you probably can. The customer card. I'll double-click this one to do the merge on that. 32 differences. Let's have a look at how that actually works. So the only thing I did in the middle folder, that is my modified 14x source. In the left folder is the 14 baseline, and on the right folder is the 15 baseline. And we can see that in 15 they changed the tooltip, I think. And let's click the arrow down to find the next difference. This is our fields, right? This is the two fields that we added in our app, which is not in 14 base and it's not in 15 base. The result down here actually adds the fields to that. And since they are formatted as 15 because we use that tool, that's actually fine. I'll search for the next difference. That's an application area changed in 15, and it actually says that if the things are not changed in A and B, then if C changes it, that becomes the result. So we can go through this, but it actually did exactly what I wanted to. In all cases, I got my fields added to the 15 source. I'm going to save that. I'm going to do the same with the customer table. Click here, navigate down, find, yes, that is our fields that got added here. Save that, and now we have our customized app. So now I did a customer, or I converted everything to a code customized solution, and that might be fine, right? But actually, if we look at how data upgrade would work with that, then in this case, the new table would just be part of the base application. And we actually have no good way of moving that out to a extension table afterwards. The customized table kind of works. The fields are now in the base app, and I actually can do data upgrade. I also can do data upgrade with the new table, but I'll now be stuck in a world where this new table belongs to the base app. And how do I move that into an extension? So maybe there's a third way. Maybe we can do I know we talked about hybrid before, where hybrid was between CIAL and AL, but right now what we can do is we can talk about some things that we modified in the base app and put the rest in an extension. The things we want to keep in the base app in order to do the data upgrade right now would be the customized fields or the customized tables. That means that if you have added fields to a table, leave that in the base app, but put all of the other things in an extension that has a dependency on your base app. And if you don't have a lot of code on that table that then has a dependency on the rest of your extension, that should work. If you have code, or if you have things that depend on the rest of the extension in your modified table, refactor it out into code units or whatever, do things in 14 before taking that journey so that the only thing you leave in the base app would be these customized fields. And as I said in the beginning, we will have a way within a few releases to actually move those out to the extension at a later time. So I don't have a race with that one, but this one becomes a little lengthier process, and the code conversion process is kind of the same. We'll create the dev container, we're importing the objects, we're compiling the objects, we're creating the baseline, doing all of these things as we did before. We are, however, only going to merge the table modifications. That's the only thing we put into the modified folder. Then we're going to convert the modifications to an AL app that we did in the first step, remove the table extensions, and create a project, and then compile that one. Now that actually should be something that we can later run. And I'm pretty sure that this is probably going to take more time than I want to wait for, so we might want to, in a moment, continue our presentation and then get back to the demo after that. Let's run some of this. Here, F8. So it does kind of the same things as before. It is exporting all the base lines to different folders than before. And then we have, the only thing we need to merge now is the table extension. And when we've done that, then let's see what else is happening here. We'll merge we're deleting everything there. We're merging our modified folders here. And after that, we are compiling our base app. Then we are converting our modified files and removing anything that is named table extension. So let's go here. And I'm just going to say save to this one because I know it's fine. Go back and say yes to that. So what's going to do now is compile our app, and that's going to take a few minutes, and it's going to convert the modified objects and then create the extension that we want to use afterwards. The reason why I'm stopping a little here is to try to figure out whether it's a good time now to switch over to presentation and talk a little bit about, and then let my machine work on this piece for a few minutes and then get back to that one. So we will do that. Switch over to our presentation. The thing we can do when we see that in a moment now is we're going to get two apps out of this, right? We're going to get the base app and we're going to get our extension as an app as well. And of course, the extension has a dependency on the base app. That is for us. And I've demoed some of that, but it's still running. And for the data upgrade, now the new table will just flow over because we now have the new table in our extension. We have the new table in our base app, and that can easily flow over and become the new extension table when we do it the right way, like Nikola has taught me to do in the last few days. And our customized table will kind of work because it keeps the fields in the base app, and we can manage that because we can move them at a later time. With that, I'm going to give the word to Nikola for a few minutes, and then get the word back when my laptop is
Done.
complete.
All right. So basically, let's pretend that Freddy's laptop is fast and that it's over. In a few minutes, you will see that Freddy has climbed the mountain, right? And this was supposed to be a proof that he did it, but now we know it's fake, right? So the thing that we are going to do in the next demo that is going to follow is to upgrade the tenant in Docker and to run the test to ensure that the code is correct. And you can let me know when the upgrade is done, because I can talk through what is going to happen during the upgrade now. So, as you have heard, if you have added tables, we can move these automatically. The only thing that you need to do is to make sure that the ID and the name matches. And then when the upgrade is happening, during the sync step, we are going to move the tables to the extensions without you having to write any upgrade. To be very geeky, if you take a look at the SQL definition, the thing that is going to happen, that Freddy will show to you, is that we are going to add a GUID to each of the tables that got moved. And that is basically how the tables are getting moved from CIAL to AL. Now, we have a problem that we cannot move the tables from one extension to another. So if the table ends up in the base app, currently there is a deliverable that is in progress, which will let you to move the table from the base app to any other extension that you want, using the similar mechanism. In reality, it's going to be renaming this GUID and updating few metadata objects. We are looking into easing up this requirement then that the number and the name needs to match. So we would like to give you an ability to automatically renumber and rename, because that can be a difficult process, right? And ideally, if you would like to move it to the ISV range or PTE range, it should be easier in general. So the team is currently looking into if that is possible and how much is it going to cost. Now, the part which is bad is moving fields to the table extensions. And if you need to do this one right now, this is the process that you need to do. So you need to mark the old fields as obsolete. You need to introduce a table extension, get a new name and a new number, and then you have to write this CIAL code which is doing the loopy, right? It's going to do the for each and copy and move the field one by one. And basically this is really bad. And we got the feedback from the partners that said, like, we have added around 200 fields in our ISV solutions, and we cannot possibly renumber and rename 200 fields. And that's why the team is currently looking into automating this process. However, if you would like to get into SaaS with your extension, this is the thing that you can do right now. It has one small caveat, and that is if the table is big, the SQL Azure can upgrade up to 800,000 records. Otherwise, we would have to do something special to make it run. So this for each upgrade is not working gracefully with SQL Azure. Yep, and as I said, the feature is coming. So we are going to eliminate one of these kryptonite problems that we are facing in the upgrade. So one very important feature that you will see is the destination AppsForMigration. And this is a new server configuration. And the main purpose for this one is to resolve the manifests. So if you're having an old 13 app, which is targeting the CIAL, it is still going to continue to run. So in this server configuration, you're going to put in all of the apps that were part of the CIAL-Base app in the past, and you can even add the extensions that haven't been the part of the CIAL-Base app. And the second feature that this functionality does, it is going to publish and install, it's going to install and upgrade all of the apps automatically during the upgrade for you. It's not going to run the install trigger because the app was already there. You have just basically converted it from CIAL into AL. And this is a very important feature that was added. This is the example of the old manifest file. The platform version is still valid. Application version is basically gone. There is no CIAL. But all of the apps are going to continue to work if you have marked them as destination apps for migration. How should you upgrade the app? So, Start NAV Data Upgrade only upgrades the apps that are marked for the migration. If it is not a migration app, you should first do the migration upgrade, and then you can publish all of the other apps, sync them, and call a slightly differently named commandlet, which is called start nav app data upgrade, which is going to upgrade that specific app. Now, one additional thing that is going to happen during the upgrade is that we are going to move the integration record ID into the system ID. And the thing that it will happen during the sync step is that on each of the tables, we are going to add a new column, which is named $systemid, and it's of a type GUID. And then we are going to loop over the entire integration record table, try to find the parent record. If we can find the parent record, we are going to use that value and set it on the record, preserving the integration ID. If we can't, we are going to generate a new one. And we have updated the application code, so now the integration ID for new records and the system ID are going to match. We did this because if you have synced out the integration IDs to the external systems by using APIs, for example, we cannot basically break your unique keys. And if we would do that, that could have unforeseeable consequences. So we are preserving the system IDs. The system ID functionality is really cool because you can see how you can use it here. You can get by system ID, that is fetching the record. You can find the record by system ID by setting a range. You can give it a system ID when you're inserting. Then you need to say insert true, and then we are going to use that system ID when we are inserting. And you can use it through the record ref. So it's pretty powerful. We have implemented it on the APIs. And we are currently working on refactoring CRM sync and other integration mechanisms to use this one instead of the integration record. All right, so Freddy, is the demo ready?
Yep. Or at least I think I got some more speed into my computer. So just show you, so I actually already started the upgrade process. It's not completely done yet. The result of the other process we did was to create a 15 MyBase app and a 15 My app. The 15 My app, of course, contains all the files you showed before, including my app file somewhere, isn't that? Oh, it's in the output folder. So in here is my app, and the table extension is gone because I deleted it before I compiled that one. The first one I compiled was, of course, my base app. This is my base app source. And if I go into the base app folder here, I'll see the entire 15 base app. If I go into my modified files, I'll see my customer table modifications, or actually the full customer table merged with the base app. And in the my folder, there's no my folder because everything else is in the extension. So this is my hybrid model. I, of course, compiled the base app first, copied that over and used that as symbols for my own app. So I now have a base app and an app that depends on that base app, and I can do exactly what Nikola talked about before. I already started it, but while that is running, let me take you through the PowerShell for everything that Nikola just said. So we're going to start after the other one here on the upgrade process. The first thing we want to do while 14 is still running is to uninstall and unpublish all the apps. That is done by running the PowerShell script inside of the container that I talked about before, get nav app info and uninstall nav app. Get nav app info and unpublish all the apps, and get all the simple apps and unpublish those as well. Now we have a database with data, and all the apps have disappeared, and we're kind of ready to do the conversion. Then the destination files, AppsForMigration, is a set of apps that we want to use for migrating our CIAL database to 15, and we set that in the configuration or in the custom settings file, and I'm going to show you the trick to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is actually remove my production container here. That is my 14 container, and after that sentence, I am not able to use my 14 container anymore. I could, of course, restore my backup from my 14 and then set that up again if I didn't manage to do the entire upgrade. The next thing I'll do is to create a new production container, and it very much looks like when creating the other containers. The only difference here is that I'm overriding two scripts, the setup database and the setup configuration. The thing that I need to do in the setup database before I start the service tier, I need to call invoke nav application database conversion. So the service tier or the container is starting, and then it sets up the database and it invokes database conversion, and then it tries to start the service tier. I also need to do some settings in the config file, and I do that by overriding the setup configuration file. Again, if I didn't want to do it here, I could start the container and I could reconfigure the service tier afterwards and then restart the service tier. And I could point to my database after starting the service tier, of course. By doing it this way, I'll get a service tier running in a container, and it's doing the database upgrade for me. If we go all the way up to when I started that container, we'll actually see that some point in time during this one, it says invoke database conversion right there, and is doing the database upgrade there and setting everything and then starting the service tier later. Then, after that, at this point in time, we'll have a 15 container starting, but we don't have any apps in that one. And as Nikola talked about, we then have to publish. The first thing we do is publish our symbols, our system layer, not our system application. And then the destination apps for migration, that's the same apps as before, just for where are the apps actually so that they can be installed. And here we are calling publish nav app, standard command, for doing that for all these applications. We are now restarting the service tier, and as Nikola said, when this works, then we are in a good place. Yes. And it actually worked.
Basically, this reset step is the good test, because if restarting of the app service works and you don't get any exceptions, it means that you have done the things properly. It's a really good test to sanity check if the upgrade has succeeded or not.
Next thing we do is to take all the tenants, run through the tenants and do sync nav tenant on those. Since this is a single tenant one, it just returns one tenant, and that's default, and it works fine. But it also would work on a multi-tenant container. Then we go through all our destination apps again, do the sync nav app on all of those, and then we do the test nav tenant database schema to check whether the database schema is fine. And last but not least, the invoke data upgrade, which is a function that we actually added here, which is doing what Nikola said, start nav data upgrade for our, is that for all the apps, or is that for?
Start nav data upgrade, which one?
This one, the invoke data upgrade function here is.
So start nav data upgrade is only going to upgrade destination apps for migration. Start nav app data upgrade is upgrading that specific app.
It is for the other apps that we added,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
And the last thing we actually want to do is to run the tests. One of the apps that we added for upgrade was the Microsoft Test Upgrade, and we added that early on so that we could collect information about the test. And if we run that one, we should be able to see whether our data upgrade was successfully completed. And it looks like everything is green, so that's good. I actually should be able to now start my production web client here and have a look at logging into this one to see if we are lucky that our customer still has what they had.
I mean, all the tests are passing, so they must have it, right?
Help and support will now say that we are running 15.1 application. That's because it doesn't upgrade the application number there when we do this.
Yes, you need to set it manually. So basically, application number in the database, you need to set it yourself.
Trust us.
Yes.
No, I think you can see that this is the 15 app, and we have the 15. And if we open the Canon Group customer, we'll see that they still have 50,000 reward point, and they're still a gold customer, so we're lucky.
Yes. Woo, good job. So if you can go back to the script, just to, and now this is good. This is a good demo. So if Freddy refreshes the databases,
So if we look at the database now, right, we opened SQL Server Management Studio before we did the upgrade, so this is kind of the information, and then I right-click this one and say refresh. Then everything now, or not the system app things, but everything else, or not the system layer things, but every one of the tables below has a GUID behind it. And that's because it belongs to that app now. And we can see that some of these are the system app and some of these are the base app. And
Yes.
I guess the table that we added in our extension would have our GUID on it, right?
Correct.
So we actually managed to get everything. Did you want to show the...
Yes, so one thing that I wanted to
System
show you
ID.
as well is if you open the table, right, and you take a look at the columns, you will find the system ID here. And if you query the table definition, basically you will see that for this one, right, this one should be empty, but let's pick one of them here. This one should have probably some of them. We should have generated the system IDs as GUIDs. So you can see they all got the values. One important and interesting thing to show you here as well, when it comes to the testing, for this test NAV database schema, this one is actually going to tell you if we have successfully moved all of the tables. So if some of the tables got left behind, this step is going to fail. So that means that your ID and the name are basically not matching. Yep.
Cool. You have some more slides? And then
Yes, and then we'll open up for questions. So, let's switch.
there.
Good. So, we hope that we got you excited and that you want to upgrade a tenant. But before operating the Zeppelin, the last thing that we are going to do is to go through some theory. So the first question is, where is the upgrade toolkit? And we got this question a lot. And the difference between the previous version and this version is that upgrade toolkit is now included in every app. For base app, you will be able to, so this is a system app definition, sorry. And you will be able to find it in the specific folders, and we are keeping it close to the code that is upgrading. This has a consequence that it stays as part of the app, and we are not removing it, so it's always going to be there. And we highly recommend that you follow the same pattern and put the upgrade close to the code that it upgrades in the folder. In the base app, we have placed it in the upgrade folder because we have 6,151 objects, and it's going to be hard to find the upgrade code units in so many upgrades, in so many objects. And the rule that we are following is that if you have a separate area, we are introducing a separate code unit so it's easier to read. The order of the execution of these code units must not matter. That's the only criteria. Otherwise, we are putting it into the same code unit. The main upgrade code unit is upgrade base app, so that's where the most logic is going to happen. On Prem, you can open this one and customize it. In SaaS, basically, we are the ones that are owning it. And if you need anything, we will have to introduce events. Then the structure of the upgrade code unit, it has 3 types of triggers. It's exactly the same as the extension v2, right? We are checking preconditions on database, then we are running on upgrade triggers, and then in the end we are running on validate triggers. And per database is always going to run per company. And when it comes to the execution order, we are first going to fire all of the check precondition triggers. First for the base app, then extension A, extension B, and we are following the dependencies that you have described in the app.json. Then we are going to fire all of the upgrade triggers for all of the extensions that we have, and then we are going to fire all of the validate triggers. So basically that is how upgrade is being executed. Oops, what happened? So, upgrade can go wrong, right? And let's say that in this case, we have done a wrong first name and last name split. And now because we have multiple versions, right, we heard about it late, right? We have 15, 14.3, 14.1, right? And now the question is how we are going to fix this one. Because there is a lot of customers, there is a lot of data in the customer table, right? And we have basically split this field in a wrong way. If we are using versions, this is going to be extremely hard. Because we would have to introduce these build numbers, because that's the only way to distinguish. And now if I would like to port the changes back to the legacy branches, I have to update the miner number and get the build number when it was introduced, and also to the 14.1. And you can easily see that this thing does not work. Because will this code really work? I have no idea, probably not, right? It's really hard to build a mental image what is going to happen if the end user or partner comes with a certain build number and is trying to move to another build number. It's going to be really bad. So version numbers simply would not work for us because we would have too many of them. Like it would be a sea of version numbers. We have around 5 or 6 upgrade code units in the base app. It would simply be untraceable and unmanageable for us. So as a mitigation, we're using upgrade tags. How many of you have used the upgrade tag so far? Can you raise the hands? So very few people, thus we are going to continue advertising it. The upgrade tag is having following structure. The first thing is the 3-letter company prefix. Then we are using the unique ID. For us, this is a TFS ID. And then we put the human readable description so you know what it is about. And the last thing is the date when the change was written, so we can see how old the upgrade code is. And if you would like to use it in the production, you just check if the upgrade tag has already been set, do the upgrade, and set the tag. We do not recommend hard coding it. We recommend that you just put a simple getter function which is returning a string, because if you're hard coding it across the app, it is rather bad. So you shouldn't spread the magic strings around the app. We use the TFS ID, which is something that we recommend, because if I copy-paste this number here on the previous slide, I can easily, in the TFS, get to the change list, see the pull request, see who did it, see the comments on the pull request. So it's very easy to track the things that went wrong. In reality, the whole system is just a table. And the key is the company and the tag. So for all of the methods that are per database, they are going to have company blank. For all of the methods that are per company, they are going to have a company here. So if we go back to this task where we have splitted it wrong, and if we had the upgrade tag here, it's very simple to fix. I need to add a new upgrade tag, which is now named correct, and I need to check, does the upgrade tag for splitting it in a wrong way exist or not? If it does, I need to fix. Otherwise, I can just do a correct split. So this is really good because it is also keeping you a log which upgrade methods you have executed on a certain customer. So it's quite easy to do the fixing. And this is brilliant because it is very simple to copy-paste the code across the versions, right? We can even jump the upgrade, and this thing is going to work. We recommend that you store it in the designated code unit that is just storing the tags that you have in the system, because as you're deleting the usages, you can just delete one of these getters, and then the compiler is going to tell you where it was used, so you can easily clean up your code. And this system has one major flaw, and the weakness of this system is the new companies, or if you're installing your extension for the first time. So if you're doing this, you need to register all of the upgrade tags, and that is what this event subscriber is doing. So this event subscriber is ensuring that the upgrade tags are inserted if, for example, you create a new company. There is also a method which is called set all upgrade tags, which is going to register all of the existing upgrade tags in the system, making sure that the things do not break. So if you have written the upgrade code and you're ready to upgrade, the famous last words of every developer is, it's safe, right? This code cannot fail. The proper question is, what is the worst thing that can happen, right? So what is the worst thing that can happen during the upgrade? It actually has a name, and the name is hidden bugs. Now, this is not something that I invented. It's a part of the programming jargon, which means that many developers have faced it. So you can search for it, right? And the hidden bug is a catastrophic data-destroying bug. So you have upgraded your customers, few days have passed, you were happy, and then you get a customer call and they ask you, where's my data, right? And then many people will say, let's restore from backup. But the problem is you can't restore from backup because they've been using the system for 3 days, right? And if you restore from the backup, you're going to lose the 3 days of work. So the only thing that you can do is merge the data. And Now, the open question is, how many databases can you merge? Is it 5? Is it 10? 100? 1,000, right? Because if you're running it in SaaS on a scale, it can be really difficult to manage. Now, what to do about it? The thing that I recommend is design for upgrade. Think about upgrade whenever you're doing your features. Think if it is upgradable, and have the disaster plans in place. Test that you can actually restore from backups. We did all of these things. I highly recommend keeping the upgrade code small and simple. Our golden rule is like 5 minutes code reviews. If it is longer than that, it's not good. Because if you're trying to run a simple line of code at the large number of databases and customers, it's simply not going to work. And regarding testing, it is important that you check that the correct data is written, so that we didn't execute the upgrade and didn't get the error. And we need to ensure that we do not run the upgrade twice. To give you an example of the hidden bug with our application, so let's say that we decided to go through the loopy upgrade code and remove these fields from the base app, right? And this customer had 50,000 reward points, as Freddy said to it. And let's say that customer has spent them, right? And now we are running the upgrade. The thing that is going to happen is that we are going to set them back if we don't clean up the obsolete fields. And it's very easy to get into this situation. And this is the example of hidden bug because now we have to restore and merge. So it's very easy to copy over the fields. The second example is the IRS upgrade code, and this is the actual production code. So here we are actually upgrading the numbers up, right? 5 becomes 6, 6 becomes 7, 7 becomes 8. If you run this one code twice, it is going to be impossible to say what was 11 and what was 12. And if you run it 12 times, everything is going to become 12 in the end, right? So we need to ensure that this code does not run twice. So our recommendation is use upgrade tags. Don't trust the upgrade tags as well. If you can, add additional safety checks, like here. The gold customer should not be set to true, and they shouldn't have the reward points, right? You should error out, because even the upgrade tag system can have the bugs, and test it. And the last thing is register for the new companies and for the fresh app installation by using this trigger that I have shown you. We have a execution context API that was added for 14, and this is a really cool functionality, which is giving you an overview in which state your code is executing. So to give you an example, if you have something that is not safe to call during upgrade, like printing checks through the web service, if the upgrade fails, we're going to roll back SQL changes. We cannot roll back the calls to the outside web services. Basically, that thing is going to stay, right? And we can incidentally call this one. So what should you do? You can make it safe by using this API. You get the execution context, and if it is different than normal, you can ask it, is my app the one that is triggering this? And we should definitely not be doing the purchase post in our app, right? So I want to fail the upgrade here, and I want to stop, and then we are going to move the tenants back to the old version and stop the data upgrade. Otherwise, if anybody else is doing this, we should probably log, so we know that something bad happened and we can diagnose and exit. And this is the way how you can defend calling the sensitive code during the upgrade. So let me just check the time, because this monitor turned off. Yes, we have 15 minutes, and this is the last thing. So basically, you have followed us through the upgrade, and these are 3 architectures that you can have ended up. And if you would like to end up in the cloud, if you have ended up on the top architecture, where all of your changes are in the extension, you can easily upgrade. If you're in the middle architecture, we will let you into the SaaS if you're a large vertical solution. And we already have a number of large verticals that are running in the cloud. The reason for this is because it is really hard to manage the different solutions with this architecture, so we want to keep the number of the cloud solutions in the offering low. And if you have ended on this one, even though we can technically support it and the cloud can host it, we will not allow anybody to move into this cloud. And currently, we are working on the functionality which is going to help us and to enable you guys to move, like even in SaaS, to the Sunshine Cloud. where we can maintain everybody, and the life is going to be easier for all of us. If you would like to take the step number 3, this is the session you would like to visit tomorrow, where these nice guys are going to show you how you can migrate the customers to the cloud and manage them there. And the last thing, which I've kept the best for the last, what about the SaaS to SaaS upgrade, right? If you have the extension. If your extension is working, you don't have to do absolutely nothing. Destination AppsForMigration is going to fix it. If it is broken, we recommend it to have CI/CD. You should already know, otherwise we'll call you. You should fix the issue. You need to set the dependencies, and you can publish the new extension. When we get to these dependencies which you have specified, we are going to automatically upgrade your PT or your app source extension. This is the Docker builds, a link.
If you, I just wanted to, so I'm going to update that blog post, which is in the deck, with an updated information about how to get to the different builds. I think most of it is still true, even though it's 1.5 years old. But I'm going to update it so that I'm absolutely sure that everything in that one is correct. And so you'll have the link in the deck as well.
Yep. And for the last things is like compatible builds and version numbers. And this is important. So we are going to end the session with this one. So the way how we work in Microsoft is that we have a branch which is called master. And this is where the latest code is coming. And this is the insider build that Freddy is shipping. So when it comes the time for the release, we are going to branch out the release. And the first 6 numbers, from 0 to 5, are going to be both SaaS and on-prem releases. Then when the 15 comes, we branch out the new branch, and then the SaaS moves to that one. And the 14 is now being used for on-prem only cumulative updates. Now, the thing that is extremely important to understand here is if we do a bug fix here, let's say that we did the bug fix in November, right? We will port it to 15, and we will port it to 14. It's going to be released when we branch for the miner, right? Now, the thing which is going to happen is that if you try to upgrade from this one here to this one here, you're going to undo all of the bug fixes and ported features that we did. So the only way how you can upgrade is if the lines are going this way. So these lines are okay, but if the line is going in the different way, basically you're undoing bug fixes.
That should be clear for everybody, that nice drawing there.
Definitely, yes. So our recommendation is to always upgrade to the latest compatible CU, because it's going to contain all of the bug fixes. If you want to try this one out, use 15.1. It contains the most bug fixes that we have. And check the numbers. You cannot upgrade something that was released in November to the target build that was released in October. And we have talked to the team that is publishing the CUs, and now they're, for every CU that we release, they're going to put the minimal target number in the CU article, so it's going to be very visible what is the minimal target number that you can upgrade to.
Please also note on that part that sometimes we might release all of the cumulative updates for the different branches except for one, because it might have a bug that is stopping us from releasing that. So you cannot always just take latest to latest. You need to make sure that it is the latest compatible CU.
Yes. The interesting thing here is that all of these like red cumulative updates, they're usually delayed to the on-prem releases because it is SaaS and it takes more time to release. So it's going to be a few weeks delayed compared to the on-prem release. We have created a big upgrade deck that you can go and visit. So basically, when I was doing the presentation for directions, I had too many slides. I have cut them out. And we started compiling all of the stuff related to upgrade. And we have placed this one as a GitHub project. So on this GitHub project, I invite you to go out, check it out, try it, read it, and you can ask questions for clarifications or just write something if it's wrong, share input. Our documentation team is going to take the deck at the end, and it is going to upgrade the documentation. So I highly recommend to check this link here. We will also place some PowerShell commandlets, which are going to make the upgrade easier. And with that one, let's do the summary. So, refactor away from any breaking SQL changes before moving to AL. It is, we are currently working on the functionality to move the fields automatically. You can move the tables. And we are looking into renumbering and renaming automatically to make it easier. Write the upgrade code in a safe way, slowly. And the Docker is the tool to go if you would like to automate your testing and speed up the process.
And everything you saw today during this demo will be on my blog, freddysblog.com, where you will be able to find information about like being able to run the entire demo end to end, probably sometime next week.
All right.
With that, I think we have like 10 minutes for questions, and I think we have t-shirts for the first few questions asked. So who wants to go first? We have there. Oop.
In the presentation you showed before, you were moving some fields on the customer table and actually making a hybrid. Can you see when you look in the table in the SQL Server that it still has the original app ID next to the customer table? So can you actually see that you have modified the base app for this table?
No.
Because when we as a partner, we are changing, customers are moving between partners, and if we come in as a new partner and we look at that, we will think this is a standard 15.
Yes.
Is there anywhere we can see that it is a hybrid?
No, because basically on Prem you're allowed to use the Microsoft as the publisher name, and you're allowed to use the Microsoft GUID. For SaaS, we are requiring a difference. So for SaaS, you need to change it.
Okay, so you're allowed to use the GUID, and that was actually why you also said we had to change the base app ID. The app ID wasn't changed when you opened the...
Basically, on-prem you will not be able to see this.
So we have to be very careful about this because we might not know that.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, as Eric writes in his book, Eric Haugaard, one of the MVPs from Canada, wrote a book, and in that one he says, be careful and have the source code for the apps that you install.
Correct.
And that is needed here. You cannot come in as a partner, take over a customer who don't have the source code.
But it's the same as the existing code in CIAL, right? In CIAL, you would not be able to see which fields have been added by someone else.
In regards to data upgrade, would you these days suggest to go to the partner ISV app and wait until the upgrade for customized tables is in place, or go for the hybrid and take the data upgrade?
Depends on your timing.
Depends on your timing and depends on your scenario. You can drop by afterwards, we can discuss it in details, because for these questions the answer is always it depends, right? Because on one side you will spend some time refactoring and doing some additional code. In the other case you will wait, so it really depends.
Take that one back. Yep.
But yeah, basically for these scenarios, I think it would be the best just to discuss them.
I have a question about the prefix we should use for table extensions and for fields. We forced to use a 3-letter prefix, but if we're upgrading a customer, we are renaming the field because we don't have the prefix at the old solution, and so we could not upgrade it to the extension because we are not allowed to rename the field. What should we do in this situation?
The question is, are you on-prem or are you in SaaS?
On-prem.
On-premise, basically you have the direct access to SQL, right?
Yeah, but if the customer wants to go to the cloud, we need to rename it.
You need to wait for this functionality, right? So you can either do the workaround on-prem and rename it by using this custom tooling in unsupported ways. Wait for the functionality for us to allow you to rename and renumber, right? So basically these are the two only options.
I guess you can also add the fields and then do some data upgrade tool that copies the values.
And if it's a new installation, you can also have all of the new customers in a correct way, right?
Yeah.
And support the old ones. So.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we can throw that. Yeah, well, nice one. You'll get that one.
Hi. How will it deal with the events that you've published yourself and that you have dependence upon?
That's a good question. So if you are having events and event subscribers, right?
No.
I would recommend that you mark it as the destination app for migration. Because if it is a destination app for migration, then the events listeners are going to be turned on.
Okay.
Yes, so they are going to execute during upgrade.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
Because if you're following this other, like you're publishing NAV app, syncing NAV app, and upgrading NAV app, then the events may not fire.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I was slightly terrified when you showed what I think you called a hybrid base app or something along those lines. In SQL, you refreshed it and every table had changed its name. Where do we go from every table has changed its name into every table is now back to how they are normally called? Every
Also-
table had a GUID on the end. Is there a
Yep.
future for that?
So the question is, can you remove the GUID from the table name, right?
Yeah. What's the upgrade path from?
You can't, because once you have added the GUID, right,
Mhm.
all of the 15 tables are going to contain the GUID on them.
Yeah.
So there will not be any tables without a GUID. So the only tables that have no GUID are the ones that are coming from the platform itself.
Yeah.
So these are these system tables that exist
So
when no app is
when
installed.
you refreshed every table, it was a My Base app. Every table had a GUID, so there doesn't seem to be any future along those lines, does there? Really?
Well, we reused the Microsoft Base App ID, meaning that once you revert to the normal Base App and actually move your customized field into your extension when the feature is ready, then the hybrid model will actually be future safe, right?
Okay.
That was the reason for not using putting everything into a code customized, because then our new table would be post-fixed with the Base App ID, and there's no good way to move that into an extension afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
because
So this was the reason why we took the new tables into an extension right away and left the fields there, and the fields can be moved into table extension
yeah.
afterwards.
Because if the only thing that you end up after refactoring is added fields to our tables, you're going to be in great shape. Because then that table is going to keep its own GUID, right? And the only thing that we will introduce when the feature is done is the new table with your 2 fields and a new GUID, right?
Yeah.
And the old table is just going to stay in place.
Okay, thanks.
So basically the best architecture you can get is just leaving the added fields in the base app.
Or waiting until the feature is there so that you actually can get everything into table extensions right away.
Yep.
And then the move from 14 to 15 and a clean extension is by far the cleanest solution you can have. Other questions, or should we go and get a beer? It's a loaded question, I know that. Almost.
You showed the test database schema function, and you said if it fails, it would fail if a table wouldn't have upgraded correctly, right?
Yes, if the table was not moved.
Yeah. So what should we do then?
You need to check this table because that means that either a name or the ID does not match.
Okay.
So basically you need to resolve it either by fixing the AL definition, or on 14, if you want to get rid of that table, you can sync with force, right? Because that check is actually comparing the SQL chain schema with the object metadata. And it's going to find the extra tables and orphaned tables. And you need to basically see what happened, right?
Okay.
Did somebody wrote the wrong AL code, or is it a table that got left behind, right?
You probably need to roll back and start from scratch
Yes,
on the upgrade process, right?
correct.
It's not likely that you can resolve it and continue.
Yeah, basically if you got any issues on the upgrade, right, you need to restore back from backup
Start again.
and start from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, you cannot patch the upgrade process if it goes wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. It's not a smart idea.
Other questions? Whoa.
Whoa.
Should we see if we can do that? Whoa.
Great job.
Yes, I have a question. So we have a little customer which has all fields in custom range and wants to go to an extension. How to do it without renumbering? What would be the best migration path?
So you have a customer where you have a customization and you want to move them to the cloud or as a PTE? Or
To
what
the
is-
cloud, but with custom extension, not as ICV solution or app source.
I didn't get that. So did you want?
So you can have a custom extension
Yep.
on the cloud.
Yeah, a PTE person.
Yes.
Yes.
A
tenant
per tenant
extension.
extension where you have to be in between 50,000 and 100,000.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you have a customization right now where you have used your partner range, you have to renumber them in order to get into a PTE
Range.
and move them down to the PTE range that has to be between 50 and 100,000.
Yes. The problem is that, like you need to renumber on-prem, right? And renumbering on CIAL is a bit difficult. CIAL is really good at renaming, right? Because CIAL works with numbers. AL works a bit differently. AL is quite good with names, and it ignores the numbers as such. So basically, if you're on-premise, you would either need to wait for this feature that is going to do it automatically, or you would need to see how you can work around your way from it, right? You would either need to write custom upgrade code, try to tweak the object metadata in SQL with the direct access, or simply wait for this feature.
Yeah. And if IDs match in the extension and in CL,
Yes.
so you cannot publish the extension because fields already exist?
No, I think you can.
You can?
So the question is, if you have the same IDs, yes,
Yeah.
you need to give a different name, yes.
Oh, a different name.
Yes, the way how you could do it in CIAL as a two-step upgrade is that you would introduce a new name and a new name on CIAL, and then you can copy it on the extension, right, when you install it. But you would need to do a multi-step upgrade for that. So, I mean, in general, unfortunately, no, because we're blocked with this feature, which would help us to renumber and rename. Yeah, we don't have a good story in that one.
Time's up. Thanks for listening.
So, thanks a lot.